Admiral Sarah Chun stood before the massive holographic display in the Terran High Command's war room, her weathered hands clasped behind her back as she watched the enemy fleet movements across 17 star systems. The Zephyrian Alliance had been pushing deeper into human space for 3 months now, their crystalline ships leaving nothing but scorched worlds and silent colonies in their wake. "Ma'am, the Zephyrians have rejected our final diplomatic proposal," reported Commander Torres, his voice tight, with barely contained anger. "They're calling humanity soft-skinned vermin and demanding our complete surrender within 72 hours. Chen's jaw tightened. For 6 years, humanity had tried every peaceful solution imaginable. Trade agreements, cultural exchanges, territorial concessions, even offering to share their advanced medical technologies that could extend Zephyrian lifespans by centuries. Each gesture had been met with contempt and violence. The Zephyrians were an ancient race of silicon-based beings who viewed organic life as a cosmic mistake. Their empire stretched across 300 systems, built on the bones of 12 extinct civilizations. They had never encountered a species that could match their technological superiority, and they certainly didn't expect humans to be any different. "What's the status of Project Prometheus?" Chen asked quietly. Torres's eyes widened slightly. Project Prometheus was humanity's most classified military initiative, known only to the highest levels of Terran command. "All systems are operational, Admiral. The fleet is standing by in the Vega staging area." Chun turned from the display, her steel-gray eyes reflecting decades of military experience. She had fought in the colony wars, survived the Martian rebellion, and negotiated peace with the Centauri Syndicate. But this was different. The Zephyrians had made it clear that coexistence was impossible. "Signal all human colonies and outposts," she commanded. "Begin immediate evacuation protocols for civilian populations in the contested zones. Military personnel are to fall back to designated defensive positions." "Admiral," interrupted Dr. Elizabeth Nakamura, the chief science advisor, "are you certain about this course of action? Once we reveal our true capabilities, there's no going back. The galactic community will know what humanity is really capable of." Chen nodded grimly. For 2 centuries, humanity had carefully maintained the facade of being a relatively primitive species, barely worthy of galactic attention. Their real technology, their true military might, had been hidden behind layers of deception and misdirection. Trade vessels that appeared to be simple cargo haulers were actually sophisticated intelligence-gathering platforms. Colonial settlements that seemed defenseless were equipped with hidden defensive systems that could level mountain ranges. The strategy had worked perfectly. While other species fought devastating wars that reduced entire civilizations to rubble, humanity had quietly expanded, learned, and prepared. They had studied every major galactic power, analyzed their technologies, mapped their weaknesses, and developed counters to their most advanced weapons systems. "The Zephyrians made their choice when they ignored our warnings," Chen said firmly. "They want to see what happens when you push humanity too far. Very well. We'll show them exactly what they've awakened." The massive communication array in the war room came to life, connecting Chun to human commanders across known space. Fleet Admiral Jackson from the Seoul Defense Force, General Morrison from the Colonial Marines, Director Walsh from Intelligence Operations, and dozens of others appeared as holographic projections around the room. "Ladies and gentlemen," Chun began, "Operation Revelation begins in 6 hours. All pretenses are hereby dropped. All hidden assets are authorized for immediate deployment. The galaxy is about to learn why Earth's children have thrived in every environment they've encountered." On the display behind her, real-time intelligence feeds showed Zephyrian forces massing for what they believed would be the final assault on human space. Their commanders were already celebrating victory, discussing how they would divide human territory among their lesser allies. They had no idea that humanity's desperate defensive fleets were actually just the visible tip of a military iceberg that had been growing in secret for generations. Hidden shipyards and dead systems had been producing vessels that made current human technology look like stone tools. Research facilities buried in asteroid belts had developed weapons that could crack planets and shields that could withstand stellar flares. "Director Walsh," Chen addressed the intelligence chief, What's the current Zephyrian assessment of human military capabilities? They believe we have approximately 800 combat vessels across all our territories. Walsh replied with a slight smile. Our actual count is currently at 47,000, with another 15,000 in final production stages. The room fell silent for a moment as the implications sank in. Humanity hadn't just been hiding their true strength. They had been systematically deceiving every major power in the galaxy about their actual capabilities. Admiral, spoke up Captain Reynolds from the Stealth Reconnaissance Division. Our deep space monitoring stations are picking up Zephyrian communications. They're planning to make an example of Earth itself. Complete planetary sterilization, followed by public broadcasts to discourage other species from resisting their expansion. Chen's expression hardened further. The Zephyrians weren't content with conquest. They wanted to send a message to the entire galaxy that defying their empire meant extinction. It was the kind of arrogance that came from centuries of unopposed victories. Very well, Chen said coldly. Since they want to make an example of someone, we'll be happy to oblige. But they won't like the lesson they're about to receive. She moved to the central command console and placed her palm on the biometric scanner. Deep beneath the Lunar Command Center, massive quantum computers began processing the most complex military operation in human history. Every hidden fleet, every secret weapon, every concealed base across 36 star systems received new orders simultaneously. Attention, Zephyrian High Command. Chen spoke into the galaxy-wide communication channel that every major power monitored. Her voice carried the weight of absolute authority. This is Admiral Sarah Chun of Terran High Command. For 6 years, humanity has sought peace with your empire. We offered trade, knowledge, and friendship. You responded with invasion, genocide, and threats against our homeworld. The transmission was being received across hundreds of systems. Every species with faster-than-light communication capabilities was listening as Chun continued. You have demanded our surrender, calling us soft-skinned vermin unworthy of existence. You have boasted that no force in this galaxy can stand against your might. You have threatened to sterilize Earth and broadcast our destruction as entertainment. Chen's voice grew colder with each word. You chose conflict over cooperation. You chose war over wisdom. Very well. But understand this. You are not fighting the weak, primitive species you believe us to be. You are about to face humanity as we truly are. The transmission ended, leaving the galaxy in stunned silence. For the first time in 2 centuries, humanity had spoken with the voice of a major power. The pretense was over. The mask was off. In the Zephyrian capital system, Emperor Vexcar dismissed the human warning with crystalline laughter. Empty words from a dying species, he proclaimed to his war council. Send word to all fleet commanders. The final assault begins immediately. Let us end this farce and claim our new territory. But deep in human space, something unprecedented was stirring. Ships that had never appeared on any scanner emerged from hidden bases. Weapons that existed only in theoretical physics papers powered up for the first time. Soldiers who had trained their entire lives for this moment prepared to show the galaxy what happened when you threatened humanity's children. The Zephyrians had demanded to see humanity's true nature. They were about to get their wish, and the revelation would reshape the balance of power across the entire galaxy forever. The first sign that something had changed came from the Kepler 442 system, where a Zephyrian scouting fleet of 30 vessels had been monitoring human evacuation efforts. Commander Vextan was reviewing intelligence reports when his sensor officer's crystalline voice cracked with confusion. Sir, I'm detecting massive gravitational anomalies throughout the system. Something large is approaching from the outer asteroid belt. Define large, Lieutenant, Vextan commanded, his faceted eyes reflecting the tactical display. Sir, the mass readings don't make sense. Whatever's out there is registering as larger than a moon. But our long-range sensors show nothing visible. Vextan's confidence began to waver. In 3 centuries of military service, he had never encountered sensor readings like these. Full active scan, maximum power. I want to know what we're dealing with. The moment their scanners reached full intensity, space itself seemed to shimmer and twist. Reality bent like heated metal, and suddenly, the empty void around them erupted with light and metal. Massive shapes materialized from nowhere, their hulls scarred with battle damage that spoke of conflicts the Zephyrians had never imagined. "By the Crystal Throne," whispered the sensor officer. "Sir, there are over 200 ships surrounding us. They just appeared out of nothing." Vextan stared at the tactical display in growing horror. The human vessels were unlike anything in their intelligence files. Where Zephyrian ships were elegant crystalline structures designed for beauty as much as function, these human warships were purely practical instruments of destruction. Their hulls were covered in weapon ports, sensor arrays, and armor plating that looked thick enough to stop stellar wind. "How is this possible?" Vextan demanded. "Our intelligence report stated that humanity has no cloaking technology." The answer came in the form of a transmission from the largest human vessel, a massive dreadnought that dwarfed even the Zephyrian command ship. "Zephyrian fleet, this is Captain Maria Santos of the Terran Navy vessel Indomitable. You have entered human space with hostile intent. You have 60 seconds to power down your weapons and prepare for boarding, or we will demonstrate why that's not advisable." Vextan's pride flared. "Human vessel, this is Commander Vextan of the glorious Imperial Navy. We do not surrender to inferior species. Your pathetic fleet cannot match the might of the Crystal Empire." "Inferior species?" came the human captain's voice, and Vextan could detect something that made his crystalline form shiver: amusement. "Commander, I think there's been a fundamental misunderstanding about who's inferior here. Allow me to provide a demonstration." One of the human vessels, a ship barely a quarter the size of Vextan's command cruiser, suddenly accelerated toward the Zephyrian formation. Vextan ordered his gunners to open fire, confident that their plasma cannons would reduce the small human ship to space dust. The plasma beams struck the human vessel squarely and simply disappeared. The ship's hull didn't even glow from the impact. "What?" Vextan gasped. "Our weapons had no effect." "Your plasma technology is impressive," Captain Santos's voice continued conversationally, "but it's based on principles we mastered 50 years ago. Our defensive screens don't just deflect energy, they absorb it and redirect it into our own power systems. Thank you for the recharge." The small human ship continued its approach, completely ignoring the increasingly frantic Zephyrian weapons fire. When it reached optimal range, it fired a single shot from what appeared to be a minor secondary weapon. The beam that struck Vextan's flagship wasn't the crude kinetic projectiles or simple energy bolts the Zephyrians expected from primitive humans. It was a focused stream of exotic matter that existed in 11 dimensions simultaneously, guided by artificial intelligence systems that could calculate targeting solutions faster than Zephyrian computers could process sensor data. The blast tore through the crystalline armor like it wasn't there, punched through 17 bulkheads, and detonated in the ship's main power core. The explosion was contained by emergency systems, but the message was clear: the humans could have destroyed the entire vessel with that single shot. "That was set to minimum power," Captain Santos announced calmly. "Would you like to see what happens when we get serious?" Vextan's hands trembled as he stared at the damage reports flooding his screens. His ship's armor had been designed to withstand direct hits from stellar flares. The humans had just carved through it like soft crystal. "This is impossible," he whispered. "Your species only achieved spaceflight 2 centuries ago. We've been building warships for millennia." "And that's your first mistake," came a new voice on the channel. Admiral Sarah Chen's image appeared on every screen in the Zephyrian fleet. "You assumed that time equals advancement. You've been building the same basic ships with minor improvements for thousands of years. We've been innovating, adapting, and improving every single day since we left Earth." On Chen's flagship, Dr. Nakamura was monitoring the engagement with satisfaction. "The dimensional phase generators are working perfectly, Admiral. Their weapons literally cannot touch us as long as we maintain the phase differential. And our new quantum torpedo systems? Ready for deployment. Each one carries enough antimatter to sterilize a small moon, but with pinpoint accuracy down to the molecular level." Chen nodded, turning her attention back to the tactical display. The Kepler engagement was just one of 17 simultaneous encounters occurring across human space. In every system, Zephyrian forces were discovering that their supposedly primitive opponents possessed technology that bordered on the impossible. In the Proxima system, a human vessel had demonstrated gravity manipulation technology by casually moving an asteroid the size of a city to block Zephyrian reinforcements. The ship had simply pointed a device at the space rock and relocated it across the solar system in a matter of minutes. In Alpha Centauri, Zephyrian boarding parties found themselves facing human soldiers wearing armor that made them effectively invulnerable to conventional weapons. The suits weren't just protective. They enhanced their wearers' strength, speed, and reflexes to superhuman levels while providing tactical information that let each soldier fight with the effectiveness of an entire squad. But perhaps most shocking was the discovery in the Ross 128 system, where a Zephyrian science vessel had encountered what appeared to be a human research station. When they attempted to destroy it, the station had simply vanished, not cloaked or hidden, but actually displaced into a parallel dimension where Zephyrian weapons couldn't reach it. How? Emperor Vexkar demanded when the reports reached his throne world. How is this possible? Our intelligence networks monitor every major species in the galaxy. Where did these technologies come from? His chief intelligence officer, an ancient Zephyrian whose crystalline form had been shaped by millennia of experience, provided the answer that would haunt the Empire's leadership. Majesty, we believe we have been systematically deceived for over 2 centuries. The humans haven't been hiding their technology, they've been hiding their entire civilization. The holographic displays around the throne room came alive with new intelligence data. Hidden human colonies discovered in systems that were supposedly empty. Massive industrial complexes buried inside asteroids that had been classified as dead rocks. Research facilities so advanced that Zephyrian scientists couldn't even identify what some of the equipment was designed to do. According to our new analysis, the intelligence chief continued, humanity's actual population is approximately 4 times what we believed. Their industrial capacity exceeds our own by a factor of 12. Their technological advancement is not just ahead of ours, it's operating on principles our science considers impossible. Vexkar's faceted form seemed to dim with shock. You're telling me that this primitive species has been more advanced than the Crystal Empire for decades? Yes, Majesty. And they've been watching us, learning from us, and preparing for exactly this scenario. Back in the Kepler system, Commander Vextan faced an impossible decision. His fleet was completely outmatched, his weapons useless, and his ship crippled by a demonstration shot. But surrender meant acknowledging that the mighty Zephyrian Empire had been outplayed by a species they had dismissed as vermin. Commander, Captain Santos's voice cut through his thoughts. I'm going to give you one more chance to surrender peacefully. Not because we can't destroy your entire fleet. We've already proven we can do that without breaking stride. But because ending this war quickly will save lives on both sides. And if we refuse, then you'll discover what human weapons look like when we stop holding back. Trust me, Commander, you don't want that demonstration. Vextan looked at his tactical display one more time. 200 human ships surrounded his 30 vessels, and every piece of technology his people had relied on for millennia was proving useless against their opponents. The humans had revealed capabilities that rewrote everything the galaxy thought it knew about warfare. For the first time in Zephyrian history, one of their commanders was about to do something unthinkable. He was about to surrender to an opponent they had underestimated so catastrophically that it defied comprehension. The age of Zephyrian supremacy was ending, and the galaxy was about to learn what happened when you mistook human restraint for weakness. Emperor Vexkar's crystalline claws scraped against the command console as he watched real-time feeds from 17 different battle zones. What he saw defied everything he understood about warfare, technology, and the natural order of the galaxy. In the Tau Ceti system, a single human vessel was systematically dismantling an entire Zephyrian battle group. The ship moved through space like a living thing, its hull flowing and shifting to adapt to incoming fire. When plasma beams struck its surface, the armor absorbed the energy and channeled it into weapons that fired back with twice the original power. Majesty, his science advisor's voice trembled with barely controlled panic. We're receiving telemetry from Admiral Kethvar's flagship. The human vessel just demonstrated what appears to be matter conversion technology. Explain, Vexkar demanded, though part of him dreaded the answer. It transformed one of our destroyers into pure energy, then used that energy to create what our sensors identify as a miniature star. The star lasted exactly 37 seconds before collapsing into a gravity well that consumed 3 more ships. Vexkar felt his ancient mind struggling to process the implications. Creating and destroying stellar bodies as weapons was beyond theoretical, it was godlike. How is this possible? We don't know, Majesty. Our best scientists estimate it would require technology at least 1,000 years more advanced than anything in our databases. The Emperor's attention shifted to another display showing the battle for the Vega system, where humanity's true military might was becoming impossible to deny. What the Zephyrians had assumed was humanity's main fleet turned out to be merely the advanced guard. Ships continued to emerge from empty space, not just dozens or hundreds, but thousands. Each vessel was unique, designed for specific tactical roles that complemented the others in ways that suggested centuries of coordinated military planning. Fast attack ships that could phase in and out of normal space-time. Heavy cruisers whose weapons could target enemies in adjacent solar systems. Support vessels that seemed to exist partially in another dimension, making them impossible to detect until they chose to reveal themselves. Intelligence reports from the Kepler engagement are even more disturbing, Majesty, his military advisor announced. Commander Vextan's surrender was accepted, and human forces have begun interviewing our personnel. Interviewing? Yes, Majesty. They're not torturing or executing our troops as expected. Instead, they're asking detailed questions about our technology, our military structure, our political system. And, according to our embedded surveillance devices, they already know most of the answers. Vexkar's form began to glow with barely contained rage. You're telling me they've been spying on us? More than that, Majesty. Based on the questions they're asking and the knowledge they're demonstrating, we believe humanity has had comprehensive intelligence on the Crystal Empire for at least 50 years. They know our ship designs, our weapon capabilities, our strategic doctrines, even the personal habits of our senior commanders. The implications crashed over Vexkar like a stellar tsunami. While the Zephyrian Empire had been dismissing humanity as irrelevant primitives, these supposedly backward aliens had been conducting the most sophisticated espionage operation in galactic history. Show me the fleet positions, he commanded. The main tactical display updated to show the current situation across all theaters of operation. What Vexkar saw made his crystalline heart skip several beats. Human forces had achieved total space superiority in every contested system simultaneously. Their ships were positioned not just to win current engagements, but to control strategic hyperspace routes throughout this entire sector of the galaxy. They're not just fighting us, he realized with growing horror. They're positioning themselves to dominate galactic trade and transportation. Yes, Majesty. Our strategic analysts believe this entire conflict was planned by human leadership as a way to announce their presence as a major galactic power. They've been preparing for this moment for generations. On Earth, Admiral Chun was monitoring the same tactical displays with grim satisfaction. Operation Revelation was proceeding exactly as planned, but the true scope of humanity's preparation was only beginning to unfold. Director Walsh, she addressed the intelligence chief. What's the status of our embedded assets in the other major powers? All surveillance networks remain intact and undetected, Admiral. The hegemony, the Trade Federation, and the Collective are all monitoring this conflict with great interest. None of them suspect that we have operatives in their governments. And our sleeper fleets? Hidden and ready in 47 systems across the galaxy. If any of the major powers decide to take advantage of apparent Zephyrian weakness, they'll discover that humanity has been prepared for that scenario as well. Chen nodded, turning her attention to Dr. Nakamura. How are our new weapons systems performing? Beyond expectations, Admiral. The quantum disruptors are proving even more effective than simulated. The temporal manipulation devices are operating within acceptable parameters. And the dimensional phase technology is giving us tactical advantages that enemy forces simply cannot counter with conventional physics. What about the psi-warfare capabilities? Dr. Nakamura's expression grew serious. Admiral, I must advise caution on that front. Our telepathic enhancement programs have produced soldiers with abilities that approach the theoretical limits of what organic minds can handle. If we deploy them in this conflict, Every psychic species in the galaxy will know that humanity has developed artificial telepathy. Understood. Keep them in reserve for now. Back in Zephyrian space, Emperor Vexcar was facing the most humiliating moment in his empire's history. Report after report confirmed the same impossible reality. The Crystal Empire, masters of the galaxy for millennia, was being systematically defeated by a species they had classified as barely space-worthy. Majesty, his communications officer announced, "We're receiving a transmission from the human fleet commander. Admiral Sarah Chun is requesting to speak with you directly." Vexcar straightened his crystalline form, drawing on centuries of imperial dignity. "Put her through." Admiral Chin's image appeared on the main viewer, her expression calm and professional despite the fact that her forces were in the process of dismantling the most powerful military in known space. "Emperor Vexcar," she began with formal courtesy, "I am Admiral Sarah Chun, Supreme Commander of Terran Defense Forces. I believe our fleets are currently having a disagreement. Your forces are trespassing in Imperial space," Vexcar declared, though his voice lacked its usual authority. "Actually, Your Imperial Majesty, I think you'll find that your forces invaded human space and threatened the extinction of my species. We're simply responding to that aggression." Chin's tone remained diplomatic, but her words carried the weight of absolute military superiority. "However, I'm not contacting you to discuss territorial disputes. I'm offering you an opportunity to end this conflict before it escalates further." "You speak as if you have already won. Haven't we?" Chin asked mildly. "Your Imperial Majesty, in the past 6 hours, human forces have achieved total space superiority in 17 star systems. We have captured or destroyed over 400 Zephyrian vessels while suffering 0 casualties. Your most advanced weapons cannot penetrate our defensive systems, while our weapons can eliminate your ships from distances you cannot even detect." Vexcar's form dimmed as the brutal reality of his situation became undeniable. "What are your terms?" "Complete withdrawal of all Zephyrian forces from human space, immediate cessation of all hostile activities against human colonies and vessels, and acknowledgement that humanity is now a major galactic power with all the rights and privileges that status entails. And in return, we stop demonstrating our capabilities and return to peaceful coexistence. Your Imperial Majesty, humanity has no desire for conquest or domination. We simply want to be left alone to pursue our own development. But we will not tolerate threats to our existence." Vexcar considered his options. His military advisors had already confirmed that continued resistance was pointless. Human technology was so far beyond Zephyrian capabilities that the conflict had become less a war than a demonstration of superior science. "Very well," he said finally, the words tasting like crystalline ash. "The Crystal Empire accepts your terms." "Excellent. However, Your Imperial Majesty, I should mention that this ceasefire comes with certain understandings, such as, the galaxy has just witnessed the emergence of humanity as a technological superpower. Other species are going to want to test our capabilities, form alliances, or attempt to neutralize us before we become too strong. I want to make sure the Crystal Empire understands that any species that attacks human territory or threatens human civilians will discover that our response to the Zephyrian invasion was us being gentle." The transmission ended, leaving Vexcar alone with the crushing realization that his empire's age of dominance had ended in a single day. Humanity had not just defeated the Zephyrians. They had revolutionized galactic politics by proving that technological advancement could overcome numerical superiority so completely that traditional concepts of military power no longer applied. Across the galaxy, every major government was reassessing their intelligence on humanity and quietly preparing diplomatic missions. The species they had dismissed as primitive colonists had just demonstrated capabilities that bordered on the impossible. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted permanently, and everyone knew it. The question now was how the established powers would respond to the reality that Earth's children had been hiding in plain sight, quietly building the most advanced civilization in known space, while everyone else had been fighting over scraps. 3 weeks after the Zephyrian ceasefire, the galactic political landscape had transformed beyond recognition. What intelligence agencies across known space initially dismissed as an isolated conflict had revealed the existence of a technological superpower that had been operating in secret for centuries. In the towering spires of the hegemony capital, Chancellor Thravin studied the classified reports with growing unease. The hegemony controlled over 800 star systems and commanded fleets that had never known defeat, but the data streaming in from the Zephyrian border made their military supremacy seem suddenly fragile. The human vessels demonstrated capabilities we don't even have theoretical frameworks for, his chief scientist reported, her tentacles writhing with nervous energy. Matter conversion, dimensional manipulation, gravitational control, technologies that our most advanced research projects estimate are still centuries away. How is this possible? Thravin demanded. Our intelligence services monitor every species capable of faster-than-light travel. We have detailed assessments of their technological capabilities, military strength, and economic output. How did an entire civilization advance this far without our knowledge? Because they wanted us to underestimate them, came a new voice from the chamber's entrance. Director Walsh stepped into the room, flanked by two guards who looked suspiciously like hegemony security personnel, but moved with an efficiency that suggested entirely different training. Thravin's multiple eyes widened in shock. How did you get past our security? Chancellor, I've been attending your cabinet meetings for 3 years, Walsh replied with a slight smile. Agent Krell here has been your personal bodyguard for 18 months. And Dr. Vexthani, your chief scientist, has been providing us with regular reports on hegemony research projects since she was recruited during her graduate studies on Proxima Station. The scientist's tentacles went rigid with shock and betrayal, but she said nothing. The implications were staggering. Humanity had not only been hiding their own capabilities, but had been systematically infiltrating every major galactic power. The purpose of this visit, Walsh continued, settling into a chair that materialized from what had appeared to be empty air, is to clarify a few misconceptions about humanity's position in galactic affairs. What misconceptions? Thravin asked, though his voice suggested he was beginning to understand. The belief that the hegemony is the most powerful civilization in this galaxy. The assumption that your fleet of 12,000 vessels represents insurmountable military might. The conviction that your advanced technology gives you leverage over younger species. Walsh's expression remained pleasant, but her words carried the weight of absolute confidence. All of these beliefs have been rendered obsolete by recent events. On the main display, Walsh activated a holo projection showing the current deployment of human forces. What appeared on screen made Thravin's heart skip several beats. Thousands upon thousands of vessels, arranged in formations that suggested not just military might, but the infrastructure of an interstellar civilization far larger than anyone had suspected. This is impossible, Thravin whispered. Our surveys show that human space contains maybe 50 inhabited systems. Your surveys show what we wanted them to show, Walsh corrected. Humanity currently maintains active colonies in over 300 systems, research facilities in 60 additional locations, and hidden military bases throughout this entire spiral arm. We've been your neighbors for 2 centuries, Chancellor. You just never knew we were here. Across the galaxy, similar conversations were taking place in the capitals of every major power. Human diplomats were simultaneously revealing themselves to governments that had no idea they'd been under observation for decades. On the Trade Federation's commercial hub of New Babylon, Ambassador Rodriguez was explaining to the board of directors why their monopoly on interstellar commerce was about to face serious competition. Humanity has been developing our own trade networks for over a century, she informed the assembled corporate leaders. While you were focused on maximizing profits from existing routes, we were establishing new ones. Silent partnerships with minor species, development of previously unexplored systems, technological innovations that reduce shipping costs by factors you haven't achieved. Director Zonkar, a massive creature whose species had dominated galactic trade for millennia, slammed his appendages on the conference table. This is unacceptable. The Trade Federation has exclusive rights to commercial development in this sector. According to treaties signed with governments that had no idea humanity possessed the technological capability to honor or violate them, Rodriguez replied calmly. Those agreements are about to require serious renegotiation. On the military-industrial world of Krex Prime, General Morrison was having a much more direct conversation with the leadership of the Warrior Collective. This species had built their entire civilization around the concept of military superiority through strength and honor. They were about to learn that sometimes superior tactics and technology matter more than warrior spirit. "You claim to command the greatest military force in the galaxy," Morrison said, reviewing intelligence files that contained details about collective operations that should have been impossible for humans to obtain. "Your soldiers are indeed among the finest warriors I've ever encountered. Your tactics are elegant, your courage unquestioned, your honor absolute." War leader Krextal's massive frame radiated satisfaction. "Then, you understand why the collective commands respect throughout known space. I understand why you've been successful against opponents who fight by the same rules you do," Morrison corrected. "But, General, warfare isn't just about courage and honor anymore. When human soldiers can phase in and out of normal space-time, when our weapons can target enemies from adjacent star systems, when our armor makes individual troops effectively invulnerable to conventional weapons, traditional concepts of military honor become academic questions." To demonstrate his point, Morrison activated a holographic training simulation. Human soldiers moved through collective-designed defensive positions like ghosts, their enhanced suits allowing them to walk through walls, survive direct hits from weapons that could level buildings, and respond to threats faster than biological reflexes could process. "This is not warfare," Krextal protested. "This is something else." "Yes," Morrison agreed. "It's evolution." Back on Earth, Admiral Chun was coordinating these simultaneous diplomatic revelations while monitoring the galaxy's response to humanity's emergence as a major power. The reactions were exactly what their psychological profiles had predicted. The hegemony is attempting to form a coalition of minor powers to contain human expansion, reported Commander Torres. The Trade Federation is organizing an economic boycott, and the Warrior Collective is demanding a formal honor duel to determine galactic military supremacy. All perfectly predictable responses, Chen observed. They're each trying to use their traditional methods to deal with an unprecedented situation. How are our embedded assets responding? According to plan, our people and their governments are providing information that will help them understand why these approaches won't work. The goal is to guide them toward accepting the new reality rather than forcing us to demonstrate our capabilities more dramatically. Dr. Nakamura looked up from her analysis station. "Admiral, we're detecting increased military activity in 17 systems. It appears several minor powers are moving to challenge our territorial claims." "Which systems?" "The Rigel Consortium, the Free Colonies of Vega, and the Independent Worlds Alliance. Combined fleet strength approximately 800 vessels." Chen considered this for a moment. The galaxy was testing humanity's resolve, trying to determine if their defeat of the Zephyrians had been a fluke or represented genuine military superiority. "Signal Fleet Admiral Jackson. Operation demonstration is authorized." "Admiral," Dr. Nakamura said carefully, "are you certain? Once we reveal the planetary defense systems, there will be no way to maintain any pretense about our technological capabilities." "The pretense is already over," Chen replied. "The galaxy knows we're more advanced than they believed. Now they need to understand exactly how much more advanced we are." In the Rigel system, the combined fleet of 3 minor powers was approaching what they believed to be a lightly defended human research station. Their plan was simple: capture or destroy the facility, take hostages if possible, and force humanity to negotiate from a position of weakness. What they found instead was a revelation that would reshape their understanding of what was possible. The research station they had targeted suddenly expanded, its hull unfolding like a flower to reveal a structure the size of a small moon. Energy signatures that had been barely detectable suddenly spiked to levels that registered on their sensors as equivalent to a stellar core. Then, the planet itself came alive. What the attacking fleets had assumed was a dead world suddenly bristled with defensive installations that emerged from beneath the surface. Weapons platforms the size of cities rose from hidden caverns. Shield generators powerful enough to protect an entire solar system came online simultaneously. The planet had been converted into the most heavily fortified position in galactic history, disguised to look like an ordinary rock floating in space. "This is Admiral Jackson of the Terran Defense Force," came the transmission to the stunned attacking fleets. "You are now inside the defensive perimeter of a fully operational human fortress world. Your vessels are currently being targeted by weapons capable of sterilizing this entire star system. You have 60 seconds to power down your weapons and request permission to withdraw peacefully." The combined fleet's commanders stared at their tactical displays in absolute horror. They had come to attack what they thought was a minor research outpost, and instead found themselves facing a military installation that could have fought off the entire Zephyrian Empire. The 60 seconds passed in stunned silence as 800 warships quietly powered down their weapons and requested permission to leave. Word of the Rigel incident spread across the galaxy within hours. Humanity had not just defeated one of the major powers. They had casually revealed defensive capabilities that made their offensive victories look modest by comparison. The galaxy was beginning to understand that they weren't dealing with a newly emerged power. They were dealing with a civilization that had been quietly building the most advanced military infrastructure in known space, while everyone else had been fighting over territory and resources. The age of human secrecy was over, and the age of human dominance had begun. 6 months after the Rigel demonstration, representatives from every major galactic power gathered on the neutral world of Concordia Prime for what would become known as the Treaty of New Understanding. The Grand Assembly Hall, which had witnessed countless diplomatic negotiations over the centuries, had never hosted a meeting quite like this one. Admiral Sarah Chun entered the chamber as the official representative of humanity, but her true role was to formally announce the end of one galactic age and the beginning of another. Around her sat beings whose civilizations had shaped galactic politics for millennia, all struggling to adapt to a reality that had fundamentally changed. Emperor Vexkar of the Zephyrian Empire looked diminished, his crystalline form lacking its former radiance. The defeat of his supposedly invincible fleets had shattered more than his military. It had broken the myth of Zephyrian supremacy that had intimidated the galaxy for centuries. Chancellor Thravin of the Hegemony attended via hologram, unwilling to physically travel to a summit where his government's intelligence failures would be exposed. The discovery that humans had been infiltrating hegemony institutions for decades had triggered a massive internal investigation that was still ongoing. The Trade Federation had sent their entire board of directors, desperate to negotiate new commercial agreements before humanity's superior technology made their business model obsolete. Director Zonkar's species had built their wealth on controlling interstellar commerce, but human innovations in faster-than-light travel and resource extraction threatened to revolutionize the entire galactic economy. War leader Krextal of the Warrior Collective sat in stoic silence, his massive frame radiating the dignity of a warrior who had accepted honorable defeat. Of all the major powers, the collective had adapted most gracefully to the new reality, recognizing that humanity's emergence represented evolution rather than conquest. Ladies, gentlemen, and entities of various classifications, Admiral Chen began, her voice carrying easily through the chamber's acoustic systems. We gather today to formalize what has become abundantly clear over the past months. The balance of power in this galaxy has shifted permanently. She activated the main holographic display, showing a map of known space with current territorial boundaries and influence zones. For centuries, galactic civilization has been shaped by the assumption that technological advancement follows predictable patterns. Species develop along similar paths, with military capabilities roughly proportional to the age of their civilization and the size of their territories. The display updated, showing humanity's actual territorial holdings and technological capabilities. Gasps echoed through the chamber as delegates saw the full scope of human civilization for the first time. As you can see, those assumptions were incorrect. Humanity chose a different path, one of hidden development, careful observation, and strategic patience. While other species fought wars over resources and territory, we built infrastructure in places you didn't think to look. While you competed for technological advantages, we developed innovations you didn't think to imagine. Emperor Vexkar leaned forward, his pride warring with curiosity. How long have you been planning this deception? It wasn't deception, Your Imperial Majesty, Chen replied with diplomatic courtesy. It was survival strategy. When humanity first encountered galactic civilization, we discovered a universe divided among powers whose territorial ambitions left little room for newcomers. We could either fight for a place among you, or find our own path to prosperity. But the resources required for such development, protested Director Zonkar, his commercial mind struggling with the implications. The industrial capacity, the technological research, the military construction, where did it all come from? Dr. Nakamura stepped forward to answer. We developed technologies that made traditional resource limitations irrelevant. Asteroid mining operations that could process entire belts into raw materials. Fusion reactors that could power industrial complexes the size of continents. Manufacturing systems that could build starships faster than conventional shipyards could produce fighters. More importantly, added Director Walsh, we developed social and economic systems that eliminated waste and maximized efficiency. While other civilizations struggled with corruption, bureaucratic inefficiency, and internal conflicts that drained resources, humanity focused every aspect of our civilization on advancement and exploration. War leader Krextal spoke for the first time, his deep voice rumbling through the chamber. You speak of advancement, but what of honor? What of the warrior's path? How does a civilization maintain strength without conflict? General Morrison answered this question. By redefining what strength means, war leader. Your people value individual courage and martial skill, and those remain important virtues. But true strength in the modern galaxy comes from innovation, adaptation, and the ability to solve problems that conventional approaches cannot address. To demonstrate, Morrison continued, let me share some recent developments. Human scientists have successfully tested faster-than-light communication systems that operate instantaneously across galactic distances. Our engineers have developed habitat construction techniques that can terraform dead worlds in a matter of years rather than centuries. Our medical technology can extend the lifespan of any known species by factors ranging from 2 to 20, depending on their biological structure. The chamber fell silent as delegates absorbed the implications. Instantaneous communication would revolutionize galactic coordination. Rapid terraforming could solve the territorial disputes that drove most interstellar conflicts. Extended lifespans would transform the social structures of every civilization. Chancellor Thraven's holographic form flickered slightly as he processed this information. You're offering to share these technologies? Under appropriate circumstances, Admiral Chun confirmed. Humanity has no interest in galactic domination through military conquest or economic exploitation. Our goal has always been to ensure our species' survival and prosperity while contributing to the advancement of galactic civilization as a whole. What are these appropriate circumstances? Emperor Vexkar demanded. Recognition of humanity's status as a major galactic power with all the rights and responsibilities that entails. Formal treaties guaranteeing the security of human space and the protection of human colonies. Most importantly, a commitment from all major powers to resolve future disputes through diplomacy rather than warfare. Director Zonkar's appendages writhed with commercial calculation. And if we agree to these terms, humanity will share its technological advantages? Gradually, and with appropriate safeguards, Chen replied. Some technologies require careful implementation to avoid social disruption. Others carry risks that require extensive safety protocols. But, yes, our ultimate goal is to raise the technological level of galactic civilization as a whole. The delegates exchanged glances, each calculating the implications for their own civilizations. Humanity was offering them a choice: adapt to the new reality and benefit from unprecedented technological advancement, or cling to old power structures and be left behind by the march of progress. War leader Krextal stood slowly, his massive form commanding attention. The warrior collective accepts these terms. We pledge our honor to this new understanding and welcome humanity as equals in the galactic community. One by one, the other major powers added their formal agreement. The hegemony, recognizing that cooperation offered more benefits than resistance. The Trade Federation, eager to profit from new technologies rather than be destroyed by them. Even Emperor Vexkar, swallowing his pride to secure his empire's future. Excellent, Admiral Chen concluded. Then, let me share one final piece of information that should contextualize our discussions today. The main display updated once more, showing a map that extended far beyond the boundaries of previously known space. Star systems numbered in the millions stretched across vast spiral arms that had been thought empty or unexplored. Ladies, gentlemen, and entities, Chen announced calmly. What you see here is humanity's actual survey data of this galaxy. We have been conducting exploration missions far beyond the boundaries of known space for over a century. This galaxy contains approximately 4 million habitable systems, 12,000 species at various levels of technological development, and resources sufficient to support galactic civilization for millions of years. The chamber erupted in shocked exclamations. The implications were staggering. The territorial disputes that had shaped galactic politics for millennia were revealed as fights over a tiny fraction of available space and resources. The galaxy is far larger and more diverse than any of us imagined, Chun continued. Humanity's emergence as a major power is not a threat to existing civilizations. It's an opportunity to expand the definition of galactic civilization itself. There is room for everyone to prosper, advance, and explore. As the delegates absorbed this revelation, Admiral Chun reflected on the long journey that had brought humanity to this moment. From a small species of curious bipeds who had barely learned to leave their home planet, to the architects of a new galactic age where cooperation and advancement would replace conflict and stagnation. The mastery humanity had demonstrated was not just technological or military. It was the mastery of patience, planning, and the vision to see possibilities that others had missed. They had chosen conflict with the Zephyrians not from aggression, but from the understanding that sometimes revealing strength was necessary to achieve lasting peace. As the Treaty of New Understanding was formally signed and galactic civilization entered a new age of cooperation and exploration, one truth echoed across known space. When you chose conflict with humanity, you discovered that they had been preparing for that moment longer and more thoroughly than you had ever imagined possible. The galaxy would never be the same, and that was exactly what humanity had been planning all along.